We are going to be learning about line art. So for line art, there are two very minor things you usually want to keep in mind with lining. So the very first thing is your line weighting. Changing the thickness of your lines is what line weighting is, right? So, a lot of line art that you see, not everything is the exact same thickness. Line weighting is when you have different thicknesses and different sizes of your lines that you're using. So this is no line weight, right? Every single line is the exact same width. All the lines have the same width here. This has line weighting. So line weighting is changing the thickness of your lines. A lot of artists will say, you need to have line weighting. You always need to have line weighting. That isn't necessarily true. Don't have to have line weighting. But you don't have to have line weighting, but it can add new dimensions to a piece if you do decide to add in your line weighting, right? But sometimes we don't know where to add our weighting. So this is when our line hierarchy comes in. Our line hierarchy determines where lines should be thin and thick. So our hierarchy, kind of how I've set it up for myself, is that you have your main silhouette, the silhouette of the main subjects, S, and then you have your main sections, so like the head, the arms, clothes, etc., bigger details, and then patterns and minor details. So that's kind of what we want to think of when we think of our line hierarchy. It kind of helps organize certain areas, and it also kind of helps the eyes move around your canvas a little bit better. If everything is the exact same thickness, it can get a little bit messy. But if you don't use line weighting, how do you separate it? Well, it's easy. It's with color. Distinguish with color. So that means you'll be using different colored lines. So say if you had your main silhouette maybe will be in a really dark color. Your next main sections will be in a color that's closer to your base colors. Bigger details, even closer, and patterns of minor details that you could use no lines at all, right? You could just stick to only color for that section. And that's all kind of up to you, how you decide to weight your characters or how you decide where you want the eyes to go in certain sections. How much weighting you put on your lines, how thick you make them as a base is all up to you, right? It's all about style. So there was a poll that was on our community for what kind of character I would be designing and illustrating, and this time around everyone voted for royalty. So I'll be drawing a more royal character with very intense line art, but I'm not just going to draw somebody in a dress or somebody wearing the royal fancy clothing, right? I want to kind of make it more interesting. I'm kind of feeling inspired by a more fantasy, something a little bit more fantasy-esque. Because, royalty doesn't necessarily mean they're always in the same European dress and in the same European country. Royalty can be anything. There's so much you can do with just the concept of a royalty. So I'm kind of in this kind of serpentine mood with some kind of fantasy royalty, I'm trying to stay as zoomed out as possible so I don't get too caught up on certain areas, though I do know that I will have to get caught up on certain areas during the line art section because I want to make this very, very intensely detailed. So I will be zooming in a lot for this one. So I'm going to do a couple of sketch passes because I want to kind of figure out where all the details are going, because especially when something is a little bit more detailed, I like to kind of figure it out as a sketch first before I actually get into the final thing. If you'd like to support the channel and the creation of free arts education, become a member on Patreon. Feeling a bit like a kind of Chinese dragon kind of centaur character. Centaurs is such a cool concept, and I love when artists do centaurs and griffins and everything of other animals. One of my favorites is when they take owls and then combine them with just house cats. Those are my favorites. The reason why I keep making it longer and longer even though I have some room is because there's something called choking, and you don't want your piece to be choked. That means that it's too close to the edges of your canvas, right? So if your piece is choked, then it can feel very, very close and very constricted to the edges of your canvas, and that's something that you don't want. So you need to be kind of wise with how your piece is centered. Adding too much room, however, to a piece, you want it to be close enough so it fills up the whole canvas, but if you make it too far away from the edges, it can feel like you're wasting space. So you kind of have to know where that balance is, because if you make it too far from the edges, then it just feels like you're wasting canvas size. It can feel a little bit empty, you know? So now I'll move on to sketch pass 2, which is when I'll start to block in more details. I'm also going to have to work with a lot of clothing folds for this one. So it's going to be a lot of kind of secondary lines. So yeah, I'm trying to make this illustration very, very intricate. Just the character herself, because I want to focus on line work and intricate line work and stuff like that, because I love lining. This is going to be a lot of fur. Fur is something where you really need to know how to line. I don't like to take too long with my sketching, but now we can get into the lines. So now I can get into actually cleaning everything up. And some people are always like, oh man, my line art looks terrible after I do all my stuff. How do I fix that? Well, my friend, you just gotta turn off your sketches every once in a while, because if you keep your sketch on the whole time, you won't be able to see what your lines look like without the sketch. And that's very, very crucial, right? You kind of need to know what it looks like, so constantly be checking without it. The face is where you want to be the most careful, because the face is what the eye will lead to first, 99% of the time. So if you ever want to figure out where you need to be the most delicate with your lines, the face is 100% like almost number one. I have a ton of references off to the side for this character that I'm drawing right now, so don't worry. References, your best friend. Here's me using the line tool because I'm too lazy to do this properly. There we go. We are getting there. We're getting there. I need to fix her lines actually up here, because I should make this a little bit thicker here. So this tail segment, I'm using my whole arm to line because it's a long kind of flowing line, right? These kind of bigger segments here is where I start to use the undo button more. These bigger segments are where you want to use your whole arm instead of just your wrist, because it'll get a nice flowing motion. It'll also save your wrist a little bit more. If you liked what you saw, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Join our art community with the links down below if you'd like to support the channel and the creation of free arts education. Become a member on Patreon for working files, behind-the-scenes posts, and discounts on our class offerings. If you enjoyed this video, here's a couple other videos you can check out next.